Good evening. My name is Lucille Songhai from the MTA. I will serve as this evening's hearing officer for this virtual public hearing, the first of 8 virtual hearings, including 2 satellite hearings, to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on the proposed changes in MTA fares and tolls affecting transportation on MTA subways, buses, commuter railroads, bridges and tunnels, and the Staten Island Railway. To make the public aware of these hearings, advertisements were published in 13 print media outlets, including multilingual outlets throughout the region. Notice of these hearings were also published in press releases and posted on the MTA website, along with multilingual signs and digital displays in stations, buses, and trains. The MTA also provided notice of the hearings on social media. The MTA's Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings, describes these proposals in detail. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we are conducting these meetings virtually via Zoom's online platform and conference call feature, with a live stream available on the MTA Fare and Toll Hearing website. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.76 permits the MTA to conduct these fare and toll hearings remotely. This hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the proposals. Members of the MTA Board of Directors and senior staff are here to listen. So, board members will be listening but not commenting. MTA subject matter experts are available to answer your questions in the Zoom Q&A function this evening. The Q&A function is available only if you are logged into the Zoom webinar online, and it is located on the lower portion of your Zoom window. If you are attending via Zoom online, type your question into the Q&A function, and a subject matter expert will answer your question if it is deemed to pertain to the subject of this hearing. In addition to the virtual hearings, there are several other ways you can provide comments, ask questions, or make requests. We encourage the public to comment via the Fare and Toll Hearing website, new.mta.info/2020 hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding fare and cross charges, virtual public hearing, 2 Broadway, New York, New York, 10004, or call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. I should emphasize that every bit of public comment, including spoken comments today and at other hearings, all correspondence, emails, phone calls, and comments will be transcribed and incorporated into the official record and provided to all of the board members so that they can review them prior to final consideration of the fare and toll proposals. For the record, today's date is December 1st, 2020. The time is 5:34 p.m. Now, let me briefly describe the procedure for today's hearing. I will call the names of people who have registered to speak in the order in which they are registered. The one exception here is that if you have already spoken at a virtual public hearing during this round of hearings, you will be moved to the end of the queue. After all registrants who have not spoken at a previous virtual public hearing have had an opportunity to speak. We opened registration for today's hearing on Monday, November 23rd, 2020 at 10 a.m., and registration closed at 5 p.m. yesterday. We will remain here until all registered speakers are heard. All participants will be muted upon joining the Zoom webinar. When your name is called, please enable your camera and microphone by clicking the camera and microphone icons on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please note, there will be a brief transition to allow you to access your video and microphone. We will give you 10 seconds to turn your camera and microphone on before moving on to the next speaker. In the event your name is called and you are not present, we will read your name again in the order it was initially called at the end of the. Please provide us your name and any affiliation you wish to announce that we have it for the record. And this is important so that we can be fair to all speakers. We ask that you keep your remarks to our limit of 2 minutes. The clock on the screen will indicate how much time you have remaining, and a warning light and beep will remind you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. If you run out of time, remember, you can always submit complete written testimony to supplement your oral testimony. CART captioning and American Sign Language interpreters are available at this hearing. To access captioning at the bottom of the screen, select CC, and you will be able to turn on or enlarge the captions based on your preference. You can also view the entire transcript for context if needed. Users will not need to adjust their screens to see ASL. Thank you for listening to all of that. And now, let me introduce the MTA Board of Directors and senior executive staff that are here with us today. Our MTA board members, Jamie Barbas, Norman Brown, Victor Khaleesi, Randy Glucksman, David Jones, Linda Lacewell, Kevin Law, Robert Lynn, Heda Mahaltzis, Vincent Tessitore. From MTA leadership, we have Pat Foy, Bob Ferran, Mario Peliquin, Tom Quigley, Craig Cipriano, Phil Ng, Daniel DiCrescenzo, and Jano Lieber. I will now turn it over to MTA Chairman and CEO Pat Foy for opening remarks.
Thank you, Lucille. And I want to thank everybody for being with us as we begin the MTA standard biennial review of fare and toll policy. We recognize fully that this year, however, nothing is standard. The pandemic has affected and impacted us all in profound and lasting ways, including here at the MTA, which makes this process all the more complex and challenging. Since 2011, the MTA has implemented fare adjustments roughly every 2 years, and a proposed change to fares and tolls with a 4% revenue yield, equal to 2% a year, has been previously included in the current budget. To be clear, the current fare and toll proposals are not intended to address our current financial crisis caused by COVID. As you know, as a result of COVID-19, the MTA is facing the worst financial crisis in its history, far outpacing anything we've ever dealt with in the past, even the Great Depression. Because of precipitous declines in ridership and revenues, the MTA is facing a projected aggregate $16 billion deficit over the next number of years. We have aggressively sought additional emergency aid from the federal government to fill our budget gap, but so far have been unsuccessful. The election of President-elect Joe Biden has given us some hope on that front. We are still facing the prospect of divided government, which could threaten the progress of another stimulus package. So we must plan for the worst and hope for the best. This means the MTA board has some very tough decisions ahead, which could include service changes and reductions in positions and a continued freeze of the capital program. To be clear, no one at the MTA wants to take any of these actions, but our current dire financial outlook gives us no choice. We're committed to reviewing a wide variety of options to find the best way forward and adjusting plans as needed based on the latest developments. For the topic at hand today, the biennial fare and toll policy review, our goal is to minimize impact on New Yorkers in these difficult times. Still, we fully know that any increase will hurt New Yorkers, especially those in areas who depend on us most. It's clear that this is one of the most uncertain and challenging times any of us has ever faced, not just for the MTA, but for all of us. We appreciate each of you taking the time to make your voice heard on these proposals. This is a tough time for all New Yorkers, and we remain dedicated to keeping the region moving, as our employees have done heroically this entire year. The MTA remains on high alert, and we will do everything we can to minimize public safety risk to protect our customers and our employees as we continue navigating these uncharted times. We look forward to hearing from all of you today. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Chairman Foy. New York City Transit President Sarah Feinberg has also joined us for our hearing this evening. We will now call our first public speaker of the night. When your name is called again, there will be a brief transition to allow you to turn on your camera and unmute your camera microphone. Our first speaker this evening is Senator Todd Kaminsky, followed by Assemblymember David Weprin.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Chairman Foy, President Eng, and esteemed board members. I'm Senator Todd Kaminsky, and I'm speaking here tonight as best I can on behalf of Long Island Railroad riders. And I'm really here to speak tonight to caution against raising fares. I want to give a special thank you to board member Kevin Law for fighting on behalf and advocating on behalf of Long Island Railroad riders. Since over the last 20 years, the rate of increase of fares here for Long Island Railroad riders has gone up about 120%. And for riders who don't live so far out in Suffolk, but take a place like Rockville Center and Nassau County, their fares in just the last 10 years, since about 2010, would have gone up about $1,000. Our riders cannot simply afford another fare increase. And although we tend to view things in silos, this is on top of tax increases, high utility bills, and frankly, a poor economy that will not allow Long Island Railroad riders to sustain continued fare increases. But for the purposes of attracting ridership, it simply is the wrong thing to do and a disincentive at the very time we want to be encouraging people to get back on the trains. First, you have a tough job convincing them it's safe to do it, but we also need to make economically realistic decisions to want to encourage them to do so, and a fare increase at this would do the exact opposite. I'm with you all the way in pushing Washington to step up and help the MTA. It's the right thing to do, and they need to do that. But increasing fares would be the wrong thing to do. It's not written in stone. I don't even think it's written in law that every 2 years there has to be a fare increase. Fare increases always seem to be the MTA's resort, even when the railroad wasn't running well and we couldn't show riders what they were getting for it. Now is not the time to do it. I appreciate your creativity and good luck in your decision making going forward.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker is Assemblymember David Weprin, followed by Councilmember Edonis Rodriguez. Assemblymember David Weprin.
Yes, can you see me?
We can see and hear you.
Oh, okay. Good evening, Chairman Foy, board members, senior staff. I've been a longstanding opponent to increase fares and tolls for New York City residents most of the time. And I continue to say that I unequivocally oppose any increase in fares and tolls by the MTA in the middle of this pandemic in particular. Any increase will effectively be an additional tax on our working and middle class and on essential workers who cannot work remotely and must use public transportation. An increase will further lead to a greater cost of living in the outer boroughs and is something no New Yorker can afford now in particular. An increase will also let the MTA off the hook again on the backs of New York City commuters. I too join in your request to the federal government, and I think that is the right thing to do. The MTA has often ignored repeated warnings about inefficient business practices. I know not all the same board members and staff are here now, but the MTA was warned by the state controller in 2009 that their overtime practices were a significant issue and that there was a culture of complacency. And we are here in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic with the same issues. An independent report by Morrison and Forster found that the MTA lacked a standard system, et cetera. I don't want to, overburden what happened in the past, but in 2019, the MTA received several new revenue streams from higher fares and tolls, as well as from for-hire cars traveling into the central business district of Manhattan. I think it is really unfair that the MTA has not made significant changes to their
Thank you for
revenue
your
issues.
comment.
And I'd just like to sum up.
Thank you so much for your comment, Assembly Member. Our next speaker is Council Member Edonis Rodriguez, followed by Assembly Member Michael Riley. Council Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and all board members and the whole team of the MTA for the great job that you do every day. We are all in the interest to save and rescue the MTA. And that's why it's so important to start calling in a bipartisan effort at the national level to understand that investing on the MTA is investing in our economy, not only for the city, not only for the state, not only for the Northeast region, but for the whole country. So I do believe, and I will continue advocating with everyone, with my colleagues who are Republican at the council, with my leaders in the city and the state of New York, Senator Schumer, my great New York City congressional delegation, and the leadership that we have in the Congress with Speaker Pelosi, to be sure that the new stimulus plan should include funding to the MTA. I do believe that we have to do anything in our control to avoid any new fare increase. As you know, we are not all wealthy New Yorkers that have the luxury to relocate to the Hudson Valley or to the Hampton. We have the New Yorkers who work in the deli, in the restaurant, who are the working class, who probably are among those couple of 100,000 that still continue using our trains and our buses. So I'm appealing. I know that it's not in your heart to even entertain a conversation about a fare increase. I know that you're dealing with this crisis, which is something that no one anticipated. And as a council member, as a chairman of the Transportation Committee, you can come with a partner, advocate. But I also am asking you, as I committed to advocate at the national level, to include other ideas on how we can raise revenue so that we don't have to go to any new fare increase. Gracias, salvemos todas las MTAs. Es nuestro compromiso traerle todos los fondos para que no haya un aumento en el pasaje. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Our next speaker is Assembly Member Michael Riley, followed by Assembly Member Michael Cusick. Assembly Member Riley.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for hosting this virtual hearing. I first want to say thank you to all the members of the MTA, the hard workers on the front line. What I want to talk about today is the Staten Island resident discount for the Verrazano Bridge toll. I think that's a non-starter for us on Staten Island, for that to be eliminated. And it's ironic that we are having this hearing today when split tolling on the Verrazano actually started today. So we have more vehicles crossing over the Brooklyn being charged a toll today, starting today, that normally they would have came through Staten Island to get to Brooklyn and then went through Jersey so that they didn't have to pay the Verrazano toll going back to New Jersey. So I think that is something that we need to remember. And I think that offsets keeping the Staten Island resident discount toll. One of the other issues that I have is that I think the MTA put a lot of capital into congestion pricing, and yet we still have not got the final plan for that. And I think this budget takes into account the $15 billion that was anticipated as revenue from congestion pricing. And I think that may be part of the shortfall that we're seeing. And of course, I stood with my colleague, Joe Borelli, and members of the MTA at the Elkinville Transit Center here in Staten Island a short time ago, asking for the federal government to help our MTA, because as my colleague said prior to me, this is vital to our economy. So I will stand with you and push for that, but I also want to make sure that we save that resident discount. So thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Assemblymember Michael Cusick, followed by Congresswoman-elect Nicole Miliatakis. Assemblymember?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Foy and the board members. I want to thank you for your dedication to New York City and your roles as board members. I'd also like to start by thanking the hard workers of the MTA who are on the front lines, getting our essential workers to work all through this pandemic. It's greatly appreciated. The MTA is projecting $16 billion deficit over the next 4 years as a result of this pandemic. I know that the MTA has been fighting to secure billions in federal funding to assist in covering losses through 2021. And we all should push Washington to move immediately for funding to help us here with our transportation issues. Without securing federal money, service cuts, layoffs, and gutting of the MTA, $51.5 billion capital budget are all but inevitable. As a Staten Islander, the most concerning option being considered to combat this deficit is the elimination of the Staten Island Verrazano discount program. If this proposal is approved, the round trip toll of Staten Island residents will increase. My colleagues and I fought to establish this discount in 2014. It was created because the legislature, the governor, and you, the MTA, understood even back then that the rising tolls was a burden on Staten Islanders. Staten Islanders are disproportionately impacted by the Verrazano Bridge discount toll, and this would be a devastating effect on Staten Islanders if we go through with eliminating the discount. As you take on this task, please remember Staten Islanders need this discount more than ever, particularly during this pandemic as we fight this pandemic as a community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Congresswoman-elect Nicole Miliatakis, followed by Letitia Romaro. Congresswoman-elect.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate everyone's attendance today. I want to join with my colleagues that say I am also against any fare and toll discounts. In particular, my colleagues from Staten Island who spoke before me to talk about the need to preserve the Staten Island resident discount. As you know, this discount is unique to Staten Island because Staten Island is in a unique situation. It is the only borough that has to pay a toll to connect to the rest of its city. And that is why this toll discount was first established in 1983 under Governor Mario Cuomo. We've made the arguments before. The Verrazano Bridge, despite this discount, already subsidizes the rest of the system in many ways in terms of $500 billion or more actually in revenue that it generates, which is far more than what the maintenance of the bridge actually costs. So for a long time, and as long as I remember, the Verrazano Bridge has always been considered a cash cow in the sense for the rest of the system. And this is where we draw the line. We cannot allow the resident discount to be removed. It is heavily relied upon. You understand that we do not have the transportation options as the rest of the city. Many people do have to rely on their cars. We've been pushing for North Shore Rail. We've been North Shore Bus Rapid Transit. We've been pushing for the West Shore Rail. And obviously with the cost restraints, that's happen in the near future. But at the minimum, what we're asking is to please preserve this discount. We are looking to work with you. I've reached out to Chairman Foy already. I've asked for a meeting to discuss what measures you're doing to save, cost-effective measures that you're taking. And I think that that's something that the public wants you to be transparent about. And we understand it's a difficult circumstance. And I want you to know that I'm here to work with you, but we cannot allow this discount to be repealed in any way. So we look forward to
Thank you for your comment.
alternatives. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Letitia Romaro, followed by Christopher Greif. Please note, there will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please do as such as soon as you are able, and please begin your remarks. Our next speaker is Letitia Romaro, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good evening, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Letitia Romaro, and I'm here on behalf of the Staten Island Downtown Alliance. Chairman Foy, in 2019, you came to Staten Island for a press conference announcing two-way tolling for the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. At the time, I asked if the agreement included freezing the resident discount at its current level in perpetuity so we wouldn't have to appear at the hearings each year to beg. You told me not to worry because Staten Island would receive countless benefits from the two-way toll. The fact that I'm here begging for our resident discount to be saved today might mean that I'm a prognosticator, or maybe I just had common sense and experience. So allow me to share my thoughts for the future. As people in business make a mad dash out of Manhattan in this post-COVID world, it would make sense for the MTA to find ways to stave off the exodus by focusing on the one borough that is attractive to those who prefer to live in a suburban setting. Not only would you preserve the resident discount at the current level, but you should also invest the excess revenue generated by the VZ Bridge in real transportation improvements for Staten Island so people remain in New York instead of fleeing to New Jersey. Since the MTA bus service is the only comprehensive form of public transportation on Staten Island, I suggest that the MTA actually pay for and fund smart light technologies at all of the intersections on Staten Island, thereby facilitating public transportation by making the buses run better, and also by ending the endless traffic on Staten Island. And we can also then maybe remove our speed cameras, bus lane cameras, and red light cameras. How do you pay for this? Well, I think that we can all agree that with exodus out of Manhattan, people will not be riding the Long Island Railroad. So instead of funding the Long Island Railroad, maybe we need to fund Staten Island and keep people in New York City. I think it's a good solution for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by Deborah Greif. Christopher.
I'm here. Sorry, somehow they resetted me. Hi guys, I'm Christopher Greif. 10 years ago, we had this similar issue with cuts and fare hikes. 10 years ago, we also have to be concerned of people with disabilities and seniors. And I'm here today to talk about the people with disabilities and seniors. The one thing we have to remember is now, as we passed, we did. At least we have good buses, good trains, good Long Island Railroad, Metro North. But 7-day pass, 30-day pass cannot be discontinued. People with disabilities or seniors love those. And if we have to bring the monthly and the 7-day pass up, fine, because if we're going to be using it for the Omni in the future, we need to make sure that the Omni reduced fare is there as well as people who use the regular Omni. So instead of worrying about this, our federal government as well as state government need to remember we need the funding for elevators, update our buses where it has the ramps, make sure the wheelchairs are getting in. We need to make sure Long Island Railroad are up to date with those beautiful ramps inside their trains as well as Metro North. And we need to make sure the platforms and signage and lighting are all there. Without this, the capital project cannot continue. So I am urging all of you, instead of jumping in, let's think about it. Let's work together. And as Andy Byford was saying in the past, fast forward still will continue. until the bitter end of time. So I'm urging you all to please, let's work together and let's keep us safe. I want to thank the MTA Bus Division, Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and Subways that keeping the transportations running. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deborah Greif, followed by John Arthur Schwartz.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Greif. I am the chairperson of the Brooklyn Family Support Service Advisory Council, community member of the ACTA Committee, and a person with disabilities. I am very concerned and worried that you would cut the 7-day and the 30-day pass. As a person with disability who lives on Social Security, either SSI or SSDI, our budget is very limited. We don't get the increases that many people who are working get. And most people with disabilities, as well as seniors, most of us are poor. But by having the 30-day pass as one price, it's easier to budget, and if you have to go out to a doctor's appointment, it's there. The same with the 7-day. These are very important things not to be cut, because not all of us who may qualify, or most people with disabilities, do not get accessory, and accessory is full fare. So we already have to decide, do we want to eat, pay the rent, or can we travel somewhere just for basic needs, to pay bills, to go shopping, for food, necessities. So please think about how you're going to be affecting the seniors and persons with disabilities. I also want to thank Long Island Railroad for having fantastic plates. So when my walker and I have to get on a train, I won't fall through, and I appreciate you always watching out for me. MTA, thank you for improving all the buses. And Metro North, keep up with the rest. And I also want to thank Craig for all the support he's given people with disabilities when we've had issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Arthur Schwartz, followed by Z. Chow Wing. Mr. Schwartz, please unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Schwartz. I am speaking as the Democratic District Leader in Greenwich Village, a community that I have been serving for the last 25 years. We cannot let the current crisis situation affect long-term policy. To do what this board is proposing to do with the fares would be the same as grocery stores doubling the cost of milk in order to cover losses. The way to regain ridership in the system is not to make it more expensive and to cut service. During the lockdown, buses were free and ridership far exceeded in pre-pandemic terms the ridership on the subways. We should learn from that. Most members of this board are appointees of either the state of New York or the city of New York. Reliance on fares to cover the operating budget began when direct state and city subsidies were frozen and then stopped in the 1990s. It was only 25 years ago that fares were increased to $1.50, remember that, and ridership plummeted. That followed a freeze of direct subsidies to the operating budget from both the state and the city at $158 million a year. Then in 1999, fares were cut and ridership soared. The answer of the state and city, unfortunately, was to cut the direct subsidy to a pre-1990 level adjusted for inflation. Fares have now nearly doubled in the last 20 years. The answer for the problems of this system is for the state and city. If New York City put 1% of its budget, $1 billion into the system, it would pick up the slack. I urge you not to raise fares and to return for the next 6 months to free buses. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Z. Chow Wing, followed by Andy Pollock. Mr. Wang?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Li Chao Wang. And first of all, I want to thank all of the MTA front workers to keep the city running. My family and I moved to Staten Island a few years ago, just because we can't afford to pay an expensive rent in Brooklyn. But my wife and I, we still have our job in Brooklyn. And my son goes to school there too. Therefore, we need to go back and forth using the horizontal narrow bridge every day, and sometimes more than once a day. I believe there's many families like us, and 2020 it's a difficult year for everybody. After the pandemic, our lives are suffering. I'm here asking MTA to give us the break. Please keep the same fare rate for our bus. And most importantly, don't cut the resident discount and carpool plan, and keep the MTA rebate program to help us. For families like us, we can't afford to buy a high price ticket just to go back home. And we don't have any other choice. The horizontal narrow bridge is the only path we can use to connect other parts of New York. And it's really not fair for Staten Island residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Andy Pollock, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Good evening, everyone. So, here we are with Faremageddon once again. I knew this was coming. It's every 2 years. So here we go with the official version of Faremageddon 21. So, first of all, I understand the single ride ticket option is being proposed to get eliminated. I understand that with Omni being into the picture. I understand that Chris Greif brought up an excellent point with the 7-day and the 30-day. That needs to stay too. I am in complete agreement with that. But recently, and I've been discussing this with my other colleagues at Passengers United, we do not agree on the flat fare for commuter rail lines. We are completely against this. I would rather pay 25 or 50 cents extra on a commuter rail zone, any for an example, than rather have to worry about a flat fare on a commuter rail line. So please reconsider this, because I don't think it's necessary. My other colleagues do not think it's necessary. And we need more people to be vocal about this, because Matt Camper is going to come on one of these meetings sooner or later, and he's going to go more in depth with you guys on how residents in Nassau County are going to get impacted by this. I cannot clarify on this. You'll hear from him later this month. But once again, no flat fare. We do not want it on Metro North, and we do not want it on the Long Island Railroad. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later this month for the board meeting.
Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Nicholas Sonorine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president and CEO of Passengers United. And Passengers United does not agree with the concept of flat fares. We think that Nassau County residents should not be paying more. And also, we want unlimited ride Metro cards. We need unlimited ride Metro cards. This should not be eliminated under any circumstance. And all the elected officials who spoke earlier, you know what we need? We need a gas tax right now passed, and we need a millionaire's tax passed for the rich in New York State. We shouldn't even be asking people to pay fares at a time when people have lost their jobs, they're unemployed, many have died from COVID-19. This is just an outrage that we're asking people to pay more. So again, we want a gas tax passed. We need Congress to step up. We need Nicole in Staten Island to step up. We need all the state and federal elected officials to do their job and give the MTA a federal bailout package now. No more excuses. Enough is enough. And Republicans and Democrats and independents, we all need to work together. Because guess what? If people are going to pay more, they're not going to ride the system. And guess what? New York is going to lose, and everyone loses. So we need to pass a federal stimulus bailout now. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nicholas Sonorine, followed by Lisa Daglian. Nicholas Sonorine is our next speaker. Please unmute your microphone, please, sir.
Hello, good evening. My name is Nicholas Sonorine. I am from Brooklyn, New York, and I am from a company called Excel Security Systems. I am a worker who works in the Brooklyn area, and my comment in regards to the fare hikes proposal is that I find it very terrible that the prices of the fares are going to go up, especially for the unlimited fares. We have hardworking people, especially myself, who go to work every single day and we buy unlimited fares. And it's totally unacceptable that the fares are going to be going up. 2 to 4% for an average person during a pandemic is atrocious. It's unacceptable. And it shouldn't be playing politics with fares. We should be actually, Democrat and Republican, we should actually have a fare that's reasonable for everybody. $2.75 right now is very reasonable for everybody. And I'm going to say this also. I usually get on stations, most of the train stations that I see, especially the trains in the morning, they're not really cleaned at all. And most of the stations I can mention right now, I usually get on at Van Slycklen Avenue on the Sea Line, and it's usually not clean. But when I come back, I get on at Clinton, Washington Avenues on the Sea Line, and I can tell you that the train station has rodents running around. There's defecation by homeless people on the subways, and rats are running around near people, and it's really disgusting. And also the machines on the Manhattan side towards the token booth, the small machines are broken. So I would say this, the fares is totally unacceptable, and I will yield my time from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Sergey Lenshenko. Lisa Daglian.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, PCAC. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this first fare policy hearing. Over the course of the hearings, you'll hear from members of our New York City Transit Riders Council, Long Island Railroad Commuter Council, and Metro North Railroad Commuter Council. Collectively, they represent riders in New York's 12-county MTA region, and collectively, they're terrified of potential service cuts of 40 to 50%, particularly when combined with higher fares. We all are. We also understand that the MTA is in the direst financial situation it has ever faced. Without an infusion of federal funding, consequences to riders will be calamitous and severely hamper our region's economic recovery. Devastating service cuts would lead to massive delays in overcrowded trains and buses, further reducing people's comfort level about getting back on board. System improvements and modernization projects now on hold could be delayed by years. We need stimulus. We need congestion pricing. We need access to any and all funds that Washington can provide. What we do not need is talk of a fare hike. It's hard to discuss the particulars of 2% versus 4% increases versus elimination of time-based Metro cards, or flat fares versus monthly fares versus discounted mail-in ride on LIRR and Metro North, when we don't know what it will mean in terms of how much service there will be. Is it worth paying 4% more for 40% less, or no more for half? We know that in any other cycle, it would be time to consider fare increases, but this year is different. Many riders don't need to travel the same way, and it may be years before they do, if ever. It isn't time to give them an excuse to stay off trains and buses, but to encourage them to come back, incentivize, not penalize. But first, wait until the new administration is seated. Give them a chance to fund and improve transit. Let's reconvene in the spring. Hopefully the future will look brighter. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sergey Linchenko, followed by Kenneth Murray. Mr. Linchenko? Our next speaker is Kenneth Murray, followed by Charles Muniz. Mr. Murray? Our next speaker is Charles.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello, can you hear me now?
yes, we can hear you.
My name is Kenneth Murray, and I am a transit worker. Governor Cuomo ordered us to go to work, and we did our job. And what was our reward? Thank you for your service. You're fired. These service cuts will affect the whole entire city, the disabled, the senior citizen, the children. There will be fare raises. There will be toll raises. This is unacceptable. Transit jobs will be eliminated. This is unacceptable. If you want the economy to recover, we need a transit system that is affordable so people can get to work. The transit workers did what we were supposed to do, and over 100 of us lost our lives. We take this very serious. So I ask, demand that the transit workers unite together and begin the process of standing against this draconian way that they are forcing down our throats. I thank you. I thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Charles Muniz, followed by Chris Coppa. Charles Muniz. Our next speaker is Chris Coppa, followed by Feng Yun Nu. Our next speaker is Feng Yun Nu, followed by James Jagiello. Feng Young Nu. Our next speaker is James Jagiello. Our next speaker is Marissa Kligas Bombage.
Yes, I am here.
Hi.
It's James.
Thank you. Please start.
Yes, this is James Giacchiola here. Yes, I'd like to let you know that I would like to very strongly increase, especially during this pandemic. We need all the help we can get. And I would like to also note that occasionally some MTA employees are a little bit rude with us, particularly bus drivers on the 223. I've seen several of them refuse to pick me up, and I've seen them sometimes refuse to pick other people up as well. So hopefully we'd like to address this issue while we are here. And the fare hikes are not justified, because especially where all the people are out of work, that are or that are about to lose their jobs because of this pandemic, COVID-19 should not be considered as an excuse for a fare hike or a reduction of service. We need the service. We need the service back on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And hopefully when this pandemic is over, we'll be a lot better in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marissa Klags-Bombich, followed by Joe Kunzler. Marissa Klags-Bombich.
Hello. Sorry, I had to unmute. My name is Marissa Klages-Bombich. I have lived on the South Shore of Staten Island for most of my life. I'm here to speak about the impact the removal of the resident discount toll would have on Staten Islanders. I'm one of the nearly 20% of Staten Islanders who live here and commute to a borough that isn't Manhattan. I've worked in Long Island City as a city employee for nearly 18 years. For many of those years, I took public transportation, a trip that takes over 4 hours round trip and involves 2 states and 3 boroughs. Public transportation from outer borough to outer borough is untenable, but that's not what this hearing is about. Now, with young children at home, driving has become imperative as I seek to maximize my time, both as an employee and as a parent. The resident discount on the Verrazano is the only thing that makes my commute affordable. The quickest route for me typically involves the Verrazano Bridge, the Hugh Carey Tunnel, and the Queens Midtown Tunnel. These 3 crossings cost me just under $4,000 annually, which frankly is ridiculous to travel within the same city. But increasing the cost of the Verrazano would make my commute even more expensive and place further financial burden on my family and on other families like mine. I implore you to not remove the resident discount. Staten Islanders deserve it and need it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joe Kunzler, followed by David Schachner. I'd also like to remind our speakers that there will be a brief transition as you're enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please do so as soon as you're enabled to and begin your remarks. The next speaker is Joe Kunzler.
Hello. Thank you for unmuting me and having me at your meeting today. As you can see, I support Lindsay Boylan's activism and continued leadership on urbanist issues from the tip of her heels of steel. That said, it's hard to lead from the heels without fair policies based on equity and transit service on the road. It must be said that Senator McConnell is shopping around a COVID-19 relief package with no transit relief. So where is Governor Cuomo on this crisis? That said, I call on you to keep the 7-day and the 8-day passes and the limited ride passes for a day. Tourists like I need to get around. We should be chipping in for the MTA success, and when we leave your city, should be able to donate unused days at the airport stations for you to give to low-income folks for equity. I think it's only fair that those of us who fly in should help your residents get around. I also ask that you please consider this fare increase will hit hard low income and yet not backfill upcoming service deficits. Less service, higher fare is not fair. Let me quote Lindsay Boylan, who said, "If you are someone who is driven by something internally to help others and you're not doing something about it, you're doing something about it, then you're a leader. You don't have to wait for someone else to declare that," end quote. We need leaders right now, not whiners. I thank you for listening, and I yield back the last 15 seconds or so of my time. And again, I support Lindsay Boylan for Manhattan Council President. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Schachner, followed by Elise Feldman. David Schachner. The next speaker is Elise Feldman.
Hi, I'm Elise Feldman. I'm a resident of Staten Island, and I've been a resident of Staten Island for the last 40 years. Staten Island is not your cash cow. My property taxes are $10,000 because our mayor decided to increase our assessments so that we could pay $10,000 a year from $7,000, $6,000. When I came to Staten Island, I was paying $1,000, and that was only a few years ago. So we pay our fair share. That Verrazano Bridge is not a cash cow for the working class, for the working unions that cross that bridge every single day. My children and my husband cross that bridge 2-3 times, 5 times a week, 7 times a week to pay for the discount. That discount isn't something that's arbitrary. It's a discount so we could function and move off the island to go to work. If you are a self-employed businessman, work is on the other boroughs, not so much on Staten Island. If you're a union worker, your job is in the other boroughs, not on Staten Island. You have to stop using Staten Islanders as your cash cow for every time you have an issue with the MTA. Why would a car that is owned by a resident on Staten Island pay $19 when a train fare or a bus fare is $2.75? What's 4% of $2.75? It's a joke. You could go from Lower Manhattan to the Bronx for $2.75. You gotta be kidding me. Why don't you rethink about the bus and the subway and stop fooling around with the Verrazano Bridge, which is your cash cow? As a Staten Island resident, you must hear our voices. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next speaker is Jonathan Beatrice, followed by Ralph Garnieri.
Yes, can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Beatrice. I'm a 15-year veteran of the Transit Authority. I'm a former station agent and conductor and current tower operator. I'm also a union activist and member of the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition. There is no doubt that COVID-19 has devastated the MTA financially this year, and the need for revenue and savings hasn't been this dire in decades. What's missing here is a call for shared sacrifice. The proposal that is the subject of this hearing is astronomical fare hikes on the essential workers that have been using our subways and buses to get to the jobs that they do to get us through and to try to get us out of this pandemic. In a state that 118 billionaires call home, some of which have been profiting from this pandemic, where is the call for a millionaire's tax or dedicated funds to public transportation or both? There are better ways to solve the MTA's current financial crisis than on the backs of working and out of work people. All of the MTA's capital construction can be done more quickly, efficiently, and cost efficient in-house with our very own workers, my very own colleagues, rather than by for-profit private contractors. I've seen the difference for myself. You mentioned, Pat Foyer, you mentioned Washington gridlock. Next month, Georgia could elect 2 people to the US Senate that will tip the balance of power in favor of people who are more likely to provide the federal funding that's needed to prevent fare hikes and devastating service cuts that will make this pandemic and economic state of the MTA, the city and state, worse in the long run. Why are we making this decision now?
Thank you for your comment. The next speaker is Ralph Giarneri, followed by Dana Koenigsberg. Ralph Giarneri. We'll go to the next speaker, Dana Koenigsberg, followed by George Kaufer.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dana Koenigsberg, and I am a proud civil servant for New York City. I'm a speech language pathologist and a teacher of students with speech and language disabilities. I'm also a Staten Island resident who does happen to work in Brooklyn, which is, of course, the reason why I'm here tonight. The proposal for the elimination or reduction for Staten Island residents discount would be detrimental to people like myself and many of us on the island who are also civil servants, and we rely on that discount simply for us to be able to get to work. Chairman Foy, you are quoted to say the reason why we increase tolls and fares every 2 years is to be able to deliver customer service. I understand that, sir, and I am empathetic to it. No one expected the crisis we are in and the economic devastation that it would bring. But with all due respect, and that said, the reason why I cross the bridge every day is so I can deliver my public service, just like many of my neighbors. We live on an island and public transportation has, frankly, been a problem for years. When I first got my job, I did look into public transportation options and none of them were reasonable. To where I need to be in Brooklyn, driving is the only reasonable option, and those extra increments that I would be paying. I'm sorry? Hello? Those extra increments I would be paying to continue to do so under this proposal, they add up significantly and they would be crippling. And this is my story, but it's one that many on Staten Island share. I humbly ask that you consider your customers fully and completely in this, and that we need to be able to get to work, but we also need to be able to afford to live our lives without being crippled. Thank you for your time at this hearing, and it's encouraging to see everybody attending as attentively as they are. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is George Coffer, followed by Cassandra Yee. George Coffer.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of George Calfer. I'm Richard Calfer, his close relative. I'm going to start his speech. While I understand the MTA is facing a large budget crisis due to the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, I believe there are significant waste in its operations that should be cut before restoring fare hikes and service reductions. The first one is related to the overnight subway shutdown. The trains should not be running empty or employees only throughout the night, while essential workers are forced to take inconvenient alternatives via the bus system. The trains should actually stop overnight, with the trains left at key stations at approximately 1 a.m. and picked up for service at approximately 5 a.m. if the goal is to avoid dead heating them to the yard, or the system should be reopened to the public. With the MTA cleaners and contractors continuing to clean trains at the terminals as they were prior to May 6, 2020, we should not be looking at a 40% reduction in service to routes to the general public actually uses, while empty trains are running that could easily be eliminated with no impact to the general public. Another source of waste is the excess runtime built into the bus schedules, with additional bus lane being added throughout the city, abate not as quickly as the MTA and passengers would prefer. Run times have remained the same, resulting in a waste of the passengers' time and MTA's money as bus operators drive slower than necessary, or hold at time points, or even leave time points early. The schedule should be written in a way that the buses should move as quickly and safely as possible. Some major examples are the Staten Island Express bus routes along 42nd Street, as well as the M14A/M14D along 14th Street. As for the actual fares, since I know regardless of any public outcry, the fares will go up, I would like to express my support in implementing a 7% bonus while raising the base fare to $3 and raising the single ride ticket at $3.75, which would also result in a lower increase for the unlimited passes. As I mentioned in the 2018 fare hike hearing, I believe it is better to implement the bonus
Thank you for your
to
comment.
encourage higher. You also keep the Staten Island discount.
The next speaker is Cassandra Yee, followed by John Ferretti. The next speaker is John Ferretti, followed by Xiaolu Zhu. John Ferretti?
Yes, hi. Outrageously, New York is now the home to at least 118 billionaires who collectively saw their wealth increase by $77.3 billion, or nearly 6 times the 2020 New York State budget deficit during the first 3 months of the COVID-19 pandemic. During about the same period of the pandemic, 2.5 million of the state's residents lost their jobs. 387,000 fell ill with the virus and 31,000 died from it. And we all know billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump who pay next to nothing in taxes year after year. Transit workers as working class people abandoned in this crisis say not one more dime to reward Wall Street's crimes, not one penny in subway and bus fare increases, no layoff or job cuts of any kind until our employer, New York State, taxes these rich thieves and profiteers. MTA budget decisions are a choice that represents the values of the people making those choices. The MTA bosses are not in any way victims in this crisis. Working class and poor people are. And we have paid the price with our lives and the suffering of our communities. Your crocodile tears are not fooling anyone. We know who you are. The MTA board are lifelong opportunists and political grifters who were handpicked by Governor Cuomo to act as his mouthpieces and attack dogs. And your doomsday budget basically tells New York's working class and poor communities to drop dead. It's a declaration of war upon these communities. And the reasons behind these attacks are pretty clear. The ruling class MTA board and our corrupt Wall Street funded gangster of a governor have decided to take advantage of the COVID-19 crisis to terrorize these communities in a brazen attempt to make essential workers pay for the crisis. And if you want a war with essential workers in our families and communities, you're going to get it. So be prepared for the consequences. We will never let you disgrace the names of our fallen coworkers, family members, and communities by allowing you to again make the working class and poor pay for a crisis caused by the New York ruling class. We will bring this war to your doorstep in every way possible, and there will be no escape for you. And
Thank you for your
and the power of our
comments.
communities, workers that can.
Our next speaker is Xiaolu Zhu, followed by Troy McGee.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. And first of all, thank you for letting me having this chance for speaking. And my name is Xiaolu Zhu, and I'm a Staten Island resident. So I'm here because I know that we have this proposal on cutting the Staten Island residents discounts, and I feel like this one is totally unacceptable. So for me, as a member of a common working class, my families, like they still have work in Brooklyn and I have school in Manhattan. So I think it is not strange for, like, as a New Yorker, it is not strange for us to, like, we need to cross different boroughs to get to work, get to school. But one thing is that Staten Islanders, we need to pay a fare to cross a bridge, and we don't have other much alternatives. Because if we want to go to Queens, go to Brooklyn, we drive, and we need to go through that bridge. So for the Verrazano Bridge each year, so for last year, there were almost 200,000 vehicles per day crossing the bridge. And guess what? How many of them are from this, like our common Staten Islanders? And we need to work, we need to go to school. During this pandemic, many of us already lost the chance for getting employed. So I think it's just unacceptable for raising the fare again and make our lives harder. So please, I urge you, please reconsider about this decision. Yeah, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Troy McGee, followed by Ronald Britt. Troy McGee. Our next speaker is Ronald Britt, followed by Anthony Steiniger.
Hello, hi, Troy McGee. I'm a resident of Staten Island, and I'm here speaking about the Staten Island discount on the Verrazano Bridge. public leaders have fought time and time again to protect the Staten Island resident discount on the Verrazano Bridge. And in a borough with few transportation options, this discount is a necessity for the working people of Staten Island. It might be different if we had a rapid transit system that our elected officials have been fighting for years, but we don't. For many Staten Islanders commuting to Brooklyn and Manhattan, the Verrazano Bridge is a necessity, and the discount on the Verrazano Bridge is a necessity. Staten Island discount should be a permanent fixture. It should not be up for debate every 2 years. Reducing it or eliminating it should never be on the table. But to discuss it at a time when many have lost their income or many are in fear of losing their income is especially egregious on the part of the MTA. And it is actually tone deaf. And the sheer fact that this meeting or this hearing was led off with Staten Island representatives on both sides of the aisle seeking the same thing for the Staten Island discount not to be eliminated speaks volumes. Republicans and Democrats are saying the same thing on Staten Island. Please, if you have any morality, the Staten Island discount is something that should not be on the table for MTA to discuss either eliminating or reducing. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note, there will be a brief transition as you are enabled to turn on your camera and microphone. Please do as such as you are enabled to and begin your remarks. Our next speaker is Ronald Britt, followed by Daria Olenknovich. Mr. Britt?
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. So first, I just want to say thank you to all the frontline MTA workers for keeping this city moving. We truly appreciate you and value you. I'm here as a member of the hardworking class, predominantly Black community of Southeast Jamaica, Queens neighborhoods, which includes, Rosedale, Laurelton, Cambria Heights, St. Albans, Springfield, etc., where most of us have to take a bus to get to one of the busiest stations, hubs, Jamaica Center, which is dilapidated, but it's another issue for another time. The MTA has already been given a comprehensive set of budgetary and policy tools from leadership of the legislature, which will not only help the agency survive, but also help it to grow. I truly believe that this crisis will never be solved with Band-Aids, cuts, conventional thinking, or shared pain by increasing prices, especially without significant improved service. For example, if ridership is down, why not consider reducing fare to increase some demand looking further out? The crisis we face is a call for innovation, redesign, and dynamic thinking. It's time to consider what a 21st century commute should look like, not simply because of pandemic conditions, but because the conditions of our system and the needs of the public demand it. And lastly, to be clear, we want to keep the unlimited ride Metro card with absolutely no price increase. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Our next speaker is Anthony Steiniger, followed by Feng Sheng Liu. Anthony Steiniger?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Anthony Steiniger, and I'm speaking tonight as both a writer and as an employee. I'm a train operator with New York City Transit, and a couple of things. A lot of the problems here that are being discussed, they predate all of us here. They go back to when the MTA was first created as an organization. However, there's a lack of imagination in solving those problems. We could, if there was dedicated funding for the TA, then we wouldn't be talking about this. Fares wouldn't even be an issue, and that ultimately is what needs to happen. And the MTA an entity needs to be dissolved. There's too many redundancies, too much waste, and it's not on the end that I'm on in the frontline workers, but it's on you guys. And I know other speakers have said it before. I look at this panel here, and you guys are not reflective of the ridership. And every day I get on the train, and people who look like you, who wear business suits, are not back on the train. You have not returned. You guys have been ensconced and in your hideaways, and you've been quarantined throughout this pandemic while we've been on the front lines, moving this city. And you know what? You call us heroes. And, really, when you guys call me heroes, you guys especially call us heroes, I find it insulting because you treat us like criminals. Our crew rooms are dirty and filthy. They're not cleaned on a regular basis. And every contract time, when it comes around, this last one, you call this overtime cheats. We went from overtime cheats to heroes moving heroes, and now we're expendable. You guys don't treat us like heroes.
Our next speaker is Feng Sheng Liu. Feng Sheng Liu. Please note, we have several speakers that were registered to speak who have either not unmuted their microphones and video or have not joined the meeting. I will call through the remaining speakers now. Once we have exhausted the list of registered speakers, we will leave the hearing open for an additional 15 minutes. If you are registered to speak but have not heard your name called, please indicate in the Q&A and we will add you to the queue. Thank you. Our next speaker is Councilmember Joseph Borelli. Our next speaker is John Reyes. Our next speaker is John Macbeth. Our next speaker is Lisa Donovan. Our next speaker is Elisa Fox. Our next speaker is Igor Kotyar. Our next speaker is Keith Burrows. Our next speaker is Sergey Lenshenko.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Now it worked this time. Hi. So my name is Sergey Lyshenko. I am from Staten Island, and I'll talk about this raise in proposed raises in fares and tolls from that perspective. So first, a general comment is that definitely other ways of making money and raising money. You need to be creative. You need to look into advertising opportunities, something else. Raising tolls and fares will, especially during this time, it will lead to more people leaving New York and decrease ridership. So it's absolutely not sustainable. As you know, we are coming to this kind of conversation every 2 years, and it's every time is the same story. We need to raise tolls, we need to raise fares. So it's absolutely the worst solution probably, and there is a better solution. to this problem. Another comment I want to make is that Staten Island probably gets the least MTA services out of the whole New York City, and it pays the highest tolls for Verrazano Bridge. Plus, there is no other way to get to other boroughs besides ferry, and it's not very reasonable for many people. Staten Island has no subway connection to Manhattan and Brooklyn, right? And it's the only borough that doesn't have it. And why is it not on MTA's top of the list? I don't know. It has been proposed over 100 years ago. Still, nothing has been done, even though you found $2.5 billion per mile to fund Second Avenue subway for a borough of Manhattan, which has all the possible lines you can imagine. They needed lines so they cannot walk 2 more blocks to 4 and 5 line, right? So for them, you constructed 3 stations at the cost of $6 billion. For Staten Island, you cannot do anything, and you want for tolls. So what I would say is that, first of all, Staten Island residents should have a decrease in toll because it has very low services from MTA. It should have no increases at all until subway links are created. It's a shame that New York City doesn't have a subway connection to Manhattan and Brooklyn, and I'm not sure how you can demand more tolls from us. So that's what I wanted to say, and thanks a lot.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charles Muniz. Our next speaker is Chris Coppa. Our next speaker is Fing Young New.
There it is.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, please state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Chris Copa, and I'm just, it was hard to, okay. So basically, I feel that raising the tolls and dropping the discount for the Verrazano Bridge is the craziest idea because Staten Islanders can't afford it. And there's no absolute reason logically to do so. You have a lot of working people, and for many people, there's no other way to get to within a reasonable amount of time to, let's say, someplace like Queens or far off Brooklyn. It's, or especially Long Island, it would take so many hours to get there. It's the only solution that we have. We don't have the subway, as it was pointed out earlier, and just not fair.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fing Young New.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi. My name is Feng Yun Niu. I live in Staten Island for 15 years. I work at Brooklyn. I drive every day, almost the 6th day. So I go to Brooklyn or Manhattan, so have to cross the Verrazano Bridge. It's the only way without any choice. We have to ride to use the Verrazano Bridge. So this is the cut the Staten Island residents is not unacceptable. So it's higher, especially COVID-19. A lot of the people is lost the job, no income, and MTA will increase the Staten residents the toll unacceptable. It's not fair. So I on Gray. So so I come here. So sorry, my English is not very well, but my voice, I come here just let the MTA chair listen to my voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Keith Burris. Our next speaker is Yaz C. Our next speaker is Patrick Johnson. Our next speaker is Jake Leibowitz. Our next speaker is Edward Brown. Our next speaker is Bailey Leggett. Our next speaker is Aaron Moreno. Our next speaker is Susanna Leong. Our next speaker is Amanda Aponte. Our next speaker is Iman Rimwawi. Our next speaker is Christopher Corey. Our next speaker is Nicole Chatti. Our next speaker is Sophianne Chatti. Our next speaker is Ronti Agonleye. Our next speaker is Catherine Basil. Our next speaker is Joyce Smith. Our next speaker is Ryu Huang. Our next speaker is Edmund Huang. Our next speaker is Remy O. Our next speaker is Joseph Pizzino. Our next speaker is Anthony Lento. Our next speaker is Cassandra Yee. Our next speaker is Pavel Kutsevel. Our next speaker is Aikut Khan. Our next speaker is Roshni Kawal. Our next speaker is Lisa Sochi. And our last speaker is Feng Shang Liu. We will now be taking a 10-minute break to allow folks to come and join the Zoom who have registered to speak. We will come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. We will resume the hearing in 1 minute at 7:10, and we will repeat the names of those listed who have yet to join. Thank you. We are now resuming our fair and toll hearing. Welcome back. I will go through the list of names, and if you are here, there will be a transition to allow you to unmute your camera and microphone to give your public comment. Our next speaker is John Macbeth. Our next speaker is Lisa Donovan. Lisa Donovan. Please unmute your microphone and camera. Lisa Donovan.
I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I don't want to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Igor Kotyar. Our next speaker is Charles Muniz. Mr. Muniz, please unmute your camera and microphone. Charles Muniz.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. Please give your comment.
I can't hear them.
Please speak up,
Hello?
sir. Yes, we can hear you. Please speak up.
Hello, my name is Charles Muniz. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you. But anyway, I'm a cleaner for New York City Transit. Mr. Foy and Ms. Feinberg, along with your boss, Governor Cuomo, you guys are constantly crying about revenue loss during the pandemic. You want to raise fares, cut service, lay off over 9,000 workers, among other things, but yet refuse to let station agents make transactions, thus creating an even bigger hole in your budget. You have created a toxic environment. Passengers, especially the elderly, are angry and frustrated. Omni is a disaster, and station agents are constantly subjected to abuse, such as being cursed at, threatened, spat upon, etc. And do you care? Of course not. The mess you have created, let me be honest. If you were in charge of another organization or company, the way you have mismanaged MTA, you would have been fired a long time ago. One more thing. We lost over 130 transit workers, and approximately 8,000 of my colleagues were infected by this virus, including myself twice. You call us heroes, gave us in return zero, yet you want to reward us with layoffs. Let me point out, you didn't handle this pandemic like you should have. You bungled it. Now you want the public and transit workers to feel the brunt of your incompetence? Are you for real? Give me a break. You're pathetic.
Our next speaker is Keith Burris. Our next speaker is Yaz C. Our next speaker is Patrick Johnson. Our next speaker is Jake Leibowitz. Our next speaker is Bailey Leggett. Our next speaker is Susanna Liang. Our next speaker is Amanda Aponte. Our next speaker is Christopher Corey. Our next speaker is Nicole Chatti. Our next speaker is Sophianne Chatti. Our next speaker is Catherine Basil. Our next speaker is Joyce Smith. Our next speaker is Ryu Huang. Our next speaker is Edmund Wong. Our next speaker is Remy O. Our next speaker is Joseph Pizzino. Our next speaker is Anthony Lento. Our next speaker is Ralph Guarnieri. Our next speaker is Cassandra Yee. Our next speaker is Pavel Kutsevil.
Hello.
Hi, please state your name.
Hi, this is Ralph Guarneri. Yes, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a retired educator and I'm living on a fixed income. And I do understand the importance of balancing a budget. But at this time, I think it would be onerous to Staten Island residents to eliminate the savings on the bridge, or even at this time to raise fares. So I think, just like everything else has to be deferred, mortgages, rents, bills that have to be paid, not forgiven. I think it would be like an inopportune time to start to implement increases. And again, I understand that, things have to be balanced, and maybe at some point we will have to raise these fares and we will have to raise tolls. But I think that should be deferred for now. And I cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aikut Khan.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear and see you. Please begin.
Hi, my name is Aikud Khan. I just wanted to touch upon the Staten Island fare raises. I live on the northeast side of Staten Island, where I don't have access to any subway or the Staten Island train or the ferry. And I think the fare raises will actually be a deterrent to any budget raises. It'll just make life really miserable for the people who live on the island. just because it's just like any commodity where any other borough, you know, we have Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, where it's free to go into Manhattan, and there's not a lot of foot traffic in Manhattan. So I understand that Staten Island is one of the more frequented visitors across the bridge. But it's really just just a deterrent for me because I usually go. I have family in Brooklyn, and I will go every weekend to visit them. And just raising the tolls will just be a deterrent for me to visit my parents, nor my uh, father-in-law and my mother-in-law, etc. So I think it would really just not really raise any money for the Staten Island residents because we had just yesterday the upper level closed and there was about 2 hour traffic just to get across the Staten Island. So just to raise fare without really any improvement to the only access from Brooklyn to Staten Island being the Verrazano would just be a complete deterrent to the people who actually live on the island, and especially the people who actually have to go to work, the essential workers who have to drive their cars, would really be affected rather than any, you know, benefit of raising money from from those individuals who actually use it on a daily basis. So I would encourage you guys to really rethink about the fare raises on the Staten Island Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Roshni Kowal. Our next speaker is Lisa Sochi. Our next speaker is Daria Oleknovich. And our final speaker is Feng Sheng Lu. Our next speaker is David Schachner. David Schachner. Mr. Schachner, please unmute your microphone and camera. Please start talking, Mr. Schachner. Our next speaker is Roshni Kowal. Roshni Kowal.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi. That was a little bit of a adventure there.
We're glad you're
Good
here.
evening. Good evening. I'm Roshni. I'm an essential worker. I'd like to thank you all for your time. I'm a daily commuter and, like I said, an essential worker. People like me depend on the MTA. Our trains are the lifeblood of this city. This pandemic has already killed thousands. It has gutted our economy and jobs. The time for service cuts and fare hikes is not now. Ridership is already declining. Raising fares and eliminating unlimited cards will only backfire on the MTA. We understand this is a hard time,
We are all in this hard time together. Your deficits should not fall on the shoulders of New Yorkers. At this point, if the fares go up, then we might as well let the MTA collapse. That's all I have to say. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. This concludes our first of 8 virtual fare and toll hearings. Please visit new.mta.info/2020 hearings to register for an upcoming hearing. Thank you and good night.